Hi everyone, today we are going to cover Module 7 on gender and gender roles and relations. And we are also going to be talking a little bit about some administrative issues, particularly in regards to the quizzes and their reflection papers. So going forward, I think I'm going to try to change a little bit the dynamic of this videos to be more useful to you. I think I want to also help you out through these videos to kind of perform well in your quizzes. So what I'm going to do is highlight aspects of the readings and materials for this week that I think are going to help you answer the quiz questions. That said, I would say that the quizzes are really focused on the two readings. So you are going to find all the information that you need to answer the questions, more specifically in the reading about, I'm going to tell you the author's name in a minute, the role of machismo and marianismo by Ochoa. I put Ochoa 2009, but I'm so sorry. It's Juan Fernandez. It's the author. I wrote it incorrectly in the title. It's the one that says The Role of Machismo and Marianismo by Juan Fernandez 2009. So that article is the one, it has like a large picture on the main page when you open the PDF. It's the one that's going to really help you answer the majority of the questions in the quiz. And then the other article, there's only one question related to that in the quiz. So that already gives you a little bit of an idea of where to situate yourself so that you can use your time wisely while you prepare for quiz number 6. So in talking about gender role and relations, I think there are two main constructs that apply to how Latinas and Latinos understand gender roles, and those relates to machismo and marianismo. Now, this is an area that I feel very comfortable speaking about because this is my area of research. I study intimate partner violence in adolescents, particularly how adolescents make decisions about using abusive behaviors in their romantic relationships, and within that context, I explore the role of gender roles and relations in regards to intimate partner violence. So, gender role divisions is very key to understanding the behaviors of men, women, children, and girls in Latin America. And it is summarized by two large constructs. One of them is machismo, and the other one is marianismo. So, machismo and marianismo are not religious variables per se. They are not a religious ideology or a religious belief. However, in the case of marianismo, it is tightly related to the image of the Virgin Mary for Latinas, right? So what it really means, what Marianismo gets into, is that the Latina women is expected to be or imitate, in a sense, the behaviors of the Virgin Mary. So some of the attributes of the Latina woman is that she is sacrificing, that she's loving, nurturing, caring. Another important one is that she gives herself to others in terms of sexuality. Latina women are expected to wait until they get married in most traditional families to engage in sexual behavior. So those are some examples of how we define the behavior of women in Latin America based on gender roles. So it's not, in the case of Marianismo, it is not a religious ideology. However, it is related to the image of the Virgin Mary because it kind of pretends that women behave according to the image we have of the Virgin Mary, and that image is usually very pure, very sacrificing, very giving, very nurturing, very loving. Machismo, on the other hand, is pretty much how is a term that summarizes or describes how Latino men are expected to behave in society. And related also to machismo is also not a religious ideology, even though in its history, again, it could be related to this notion of having like a universal father figure or a parental figure that is the provider, the caretaker, the responsible one for the family. In addition to that, in sexual terms, usually it highlights the prowess of sexuality in men, the hostility, the aggressiveness of males, and also that, for example, men might be less emotional than women in terms of how they express their emotions. So, in our Latino culture, those behaviors of machismo and marianismo are very well ingrained, right? And even though, obviously, as generations keep evolving, we have seen some changes. The truth is, in my own research and even in the reading that I assigned for this week on domestic violence, you can see that cultural norms, specifically machismo and marianismo, play a very important role in how, in this case, we decide to ask for help related to violence, in if we decide to go to a doctor, if we decide, for example, to be a working mom versus a home mom. So it kind of impacts a lot of areas in our life, and it's very ingrained and very tied to who we are in the context of Latinos, right? So it's, I think what I want to get at also is that gender and gender roles are only one of many factors that divides us or that looks to separate us in society, right? In the case of gender and gender roles, it assigns the specific tasks and behaviors that are expected of men and women. But you, for example, have other categories that separate us, like race, class, ethnicity, right? That it kind of separates us into different categories, and it's how, in a sense, society determines that we should um, behave, right? What is expected from us in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of race. So those are kind of like some common variables that are a social creation to sort of separate us and label us. In the case of Latinos, it gains a particular relevance because Latinos, I think, we organize ourselves around the family unit, right? And a lot of Latino families, including my family, are very structured, very hierarchical. There are very specific roles that are assigned to men and women, and even though we are becoming more flexible as time progresses, the truth is that we still experience some backlash and difficulties when we do not conform to those gender role norms. Take, for example, the case of transgender, gay, bisexual, or lesbian adolescents or adults. I know in the case of Puerto Rico, even though there is a legal framework that protects everyone's rights in terms of sexuality, the truth is that unfortunately, cultural wise, we really haven't moved that far. And you still have families in which the boundaries regarding to sexuality and gender are very tight. And it is very hard for them to understand and respect the changes that may occur within an adolescent and an adult in regards to their sexuality and gender roles. So overall, gender roles is a social construction that we kind of use to designate how we each should behave in society according to our gender. But gender, in my opinion, and I think we all are entitled to our own perception of this based on our own experiences. To me, gender is a very fluid concept, right? As I view it in the present time. Um, I think there are behaviors of us sometimes that may be associated with manly behaviors, and sometimes we behave in ways that may be more associated to female behaviors. But just remember, this is not something that you were born with, right? the fact that women have to play with dolls, that women have to take care of the children, that women have to be loving and nurturing, that men have to be aggressive sexually or aggressive physically, the provider. These are not characteristics that are ingrained in our biology. These are characteristics that were born out of a social agreement that we kind of reached as a society, that those are the behaviors that will be expected of men and women. So for in specific context of domestic violence, in one of the articles, obviously you could see in the reading that this image of the suffering mother, the woman that has to endure, that women that has to sort of kind of accept that that is the norm and that is how men behave in society, really impacts their decision to seek for help and services, not only regarding to IPV, but in relation to other issues, health and mental health issues as well. And I think that's where the problem stems, right? Is when we start normalizing these behaviors because socially we have agreed that men and women should be a certain way. And when these behaviors become problematic is, for example, when we enter in a context of violence, right? Because we have normalized it, people start to accept those behaviors as part of ourselves and something that we have to endure, which is why it is sometimes so hard for Latina women to leave relationships of abuse, among many other factors. But one of them is the idea that they have of the role they have within the family and within society. I think in terms of practice, I always like to bring it a little bit to your own practice as social workers. This is one of the variables that I like breaking it down to my clients in sessions, right? When I'm working with them, especially with my Latino clients, because I think in a lot of the stories and narratives, you will always hear something like, my I don't think women should do that. I think women should not wear certain clothing. I think they shouldn't dress provocatively. I think men shouldn't cry. Men shouldn't express their emotions. I think we keep hearing these themes, right? However, while we hear those themes, we also hear people saying things that are more gender balanced, right? That are more gender egalitarian, right? While you're having people saying men should behave this way and women should behave this way, you're also seeing narratives where they are kind of in the process of accepting that there might be other alternative ways of behaving. So that creates a conflict with the clients that I work with, particularly adolescents and their parents, right? Sometimes adolescents are in that process of discovering their gender and sexuality, and it is very hard for the parents to sort of navigate that with them and understand that fluidity of gender, and kind of like the processes that people go through as they mature, right? Because they view, in a sense, gender as something that is assigned to people and not as something that we construct. So that's where the conflicts stem from, right? This is how we are socially organized, and so because of that, this must be the one and only truth. But I think that's, again, part of our growth that we need to do as a society. So I would encourage all you to kind of explore those issues with your own clients, to explore how did your family expect it for you to behave when you were a child? What do your family expect in the case of adolescent? Do you agree with those family expectations? Do you think those are the roles that you should have? Because again, when we feel constrained, like we have a jacket with our roles, that also creates stress and conflictual dynamic in relationships, particularly when you have men and women that transgress those boundaries and those roles. So I hope that helps you. I think it's going to give you a little bit of more light to answer the quiz. And then I'm going to take a couple of minutes to address some administrative issues that are very important. One is that I have already uploaded the grades for your reflection papers. I really wanted to take the minute to let all my students know that I spent all the weekend grading them. And even though my weekends are sacred, I felt so enriched and blessed because all your narratives were extremely powerful. And it made me realize that sometimes the stakes might be a little bit higher for some students, and that's why they maybe feel so pressured to do well in school, and to excel, because I read in a lot of your narratives that either through your own experience or through your family or through friends, um, the fact that they have gone through so much to be where you are, um, being able to educate yourself takes a different connotation in your life. So I wanted to take the time to tell you that I appreciated your honesty and um, your openness with these narratives, and that I acknowledge and respect the work and the effort that you put into your education. I think everyone did really well in general. There were a few folks that I emailed them directly, that I'm gonna give the opportunity, if you got a B and below, for this time and only this time, because this is your first reflection and it is very important for me that you learn. I'm gonna give you the opportunity to resubmit again your reflection with the corrections that I made, so that you can improve your grade. And this is only something that I'll be doing this time to give you the opportunity to learn from it, and because I think it's going to benefit you a lot. So I wrote the email, you're going to have until next Monday to send me again the revised reflection. And then the other important thing is that for those of you that have answered quiz 5, I went over it and I realized there was one item. I'm not sure which question it was, if it was question 1. In fact, let me check it really quickly, because I'm just not very sure which item. I think it's item number, question number 1. I think I'm not going to say the answer because there are people that haven't completed the quiz, but I'm going to just let you know that I went ahead for those of you that completed the quiz and gave you the point for that question, because I felt the answers that you gave, I noticed that a lot of students got it incorrectly, so that's why I checked what was going on, and I noticed that a lot of you did choose the right answer. So I give you a point back for that. And then on quiz 6, you're going to notice that there are some questions that are again to write in, like a little box to type in the question. I'm also going to be very aware of your responses. You don't need to email me for that quiz. I will check it and then decide if you indeed wrote the right answer and it marked it incorrectly. I'll give you the points for that. And then finally, I just wanted to encourage you. I've been grading all your discussion board posts. I don't always have the time to respond to all the messages with feedback. If I give you the 2 points, it's because you're doing great. But I'm seeing that a lot of you are falling a little bit behind in that department, not in the grades, but in submitting your discussion board posts. So make sure that you're submitting them. It really doesn't take that much time, and everyone almost earns 2 points all the time. So it's also an easy way to boost your grade a little bit. So on that note, I'm gonna let you go, and you are always free to email and contact me during the week. Bye-bye.